All right, so let's just, some of you might have had trouble finishing this puzzle. So we're gonna see if we can finish it right now. So this is where we left off. So I'm just gonna work back to the clues here. I haven't looked at this since yesterday, so forgive me if it takes me a sec. All right, so we were down here, we were just writing out things that we knew. We knew Jalen taught art and was related to Tom Hanks. We figured out that the person who was related to Robert Duvall got up at 6:30 and taught woodshop. And we know Nelson got up at 8. That's kind of, so I'll just write that there. Using different color pen, just so you can differentiate, if you can even tell, what I did yesterday versus today. Okay. The person who taught history has an earlier wake-up call than Jalen. So here's the person who taught history. They get up earlier than Jalen. We know Jalen's not the 6:30 person because that person's related to Duvall and she's related to Hanks. So the history person, earliest they could wake up is at 7, which means Jalen can't wake up at 7 because she wakes up after them. So Jalen can't wake up at 7. She could wake up at 7:30 if the history person woke up at 7. If the history person woke up at 7:30, she could do 8. Yeah, she could do 8:30. Okay, so that's there. Either the person who taught home ec or the person who taught woodshop is Shelby. I think we figured that out last time. That Shelby is home ec. And woodshop is this person here. All right, the person who taught home ec isn't related to DeVito, so that's Shelby now. So we can go to Shelby, not related to DeVito. Right, already knew home ec in DeVito, but now we know that that's Shelby. Okay, and then like over here, since Shelby is the home ec, so Shelby doesn't wake up at 6:30 or 8, so the home ec can't be at 6:30 or 8. So I don't know if we should do that for the other ones too. Robert D is at 6:30. I think we got that one nailed down. Wood shop, 6:30. Wood, oh, look at this, I didn't even notice. Wood shop has to be Philip. Boy, doesn't that make sense? We know Mr. Philip Bleeker, who teaches wood shop. So Philip must teach wood shop, which means he also gets up at 6:30. Okay, so Philip, wood shop, Robert Duvall. So now Philip, we can go down here, Robert Duvall. Okay. And so Philip, Robert Duvall, wood shop. All right. Nelson's synonymous with 8 a.m. And so like 8 a.m. is not art, home ec, or wood shop. So over here, 8 a.m. Nelson is not art, home ec, or wood shop. And then down here, not related to Duvall or Hanks. So 8 a.m. not Duvall or Hanks. Jalen is art and Tom Hanks. So art goes with Tom Hanks. We should fill that in. And Jalen is not at 7 a.m., so Tom Hanks can't be at 7 a.m. And Art can't be at 7 a.m. See, this is how this is helpful. So now we know that Art has to be at 8:30. Right, so it's all working off this idea of pairing these things together. So we got this clue because we said Jalen teaches art. Jalen can't wake up at 7 because she has to work up after the history person who can only wake up 7 o'clock or later. So the art person can't be at 7 a.m. We just happen to have these other things filled. So now we know Jalen must wake up at 8:30. So that means that Seth wakes up at 7 and Shelby wakes up at 7:30. So Shelby 7:30, Seth 7, and Jalen's at 8:30. So 8:30 is Tom Hanks, and already have its art, and then going down, already have those filled out. All right, so Shelby is at 7:30. So 7:30, and she's at home ec. So 7:30 a.m. is home ec. And maybe that's it for now. All right, let's go back and see any more clues that will help. The person who taught woodshop and Jalen was 6:30. The other is Tom Hanks' cousin. We figured that one out. We do know the history person's before Jalen, but that doesn't really narrow us down. Danny DeVito's cousin has an earlier wake-up call than the person who taught English. Danny DeVito's cousin, we don't know who that is yet. It's either Nelson or Seth. Has an earlier wake-up call than the person who taught English. And we don't know who's teaching English. It's Nelson or Seth. Danny DeVito, earlier than the person who taught English, Nelson or Seth. Yeah, we're gonna sit on that one. We know Seth's 7 o'clock. Okay, the one with the 7:30 wake-up call didn't teach art. 7:30 is Shelby. We know she teaches home ec. Shelby is later than Philip, so we can just double check that's true. That's true. The one with the 6:30 wake-up call is Duvall's cousin. We established that was Philip, Robert Duvall's cousin. All right, so we must be missing something here, and I'm sure you've noticed it, so I have to notice it now. Let's see. So we know Philip is Robert Duvall's cousin, 6:30 woodshop. So woodshop over here, we should fill in as Robert Duvall. And that will be helpful. Because now I can say that Danny DeVito's cousin must be the history person. So we don't have anything down here for that yet. So Danny DeVito goes with history. So because Danny DeVito's history, let's see, Nelson, we don't know what Nelson does, we know what Seth does. We know history. So this is Danny DeVito. The person who taught history has an earlier wake-up call. So DeVito is earlier than Jalen, but that's everybody. We don't know history's wake-up time. We do know that history wake-up time can't be at 7:30. So we can put an X there, right? Because Shelby is at 7:30. She teaches home ec. Danny DeVito is the cousin of the history person. And so therefore it cannot be the home ec time. So that must mean that Richard Gere's cousin wakes up at 7:30, which is Shelby. So Shelby, Richard Gere's cousin. So Shelby is Richard Gere, which means that Nelson is Billy Crystal's cousin, which means putting an X here because Shelby's Richard Gere's cousin. So that must mean that Danny DeVito goes with Seth. So Seth, we said Danny DeVito was history. So Seth must teach history, which means that Nelson is English. And the 7 wake-up call is Seth, and Seth is history and DeVito. So DeVito and history. Oh, so we could fill this out too. Billy Crystal is Nelson, which is English. Which means home ec is Richard Gere, which was Shelby. All right, so there's the completion of the puzzle. You might have come to the conclusion in a different way. That's fine. As long as you're using logic, right? So I'm constantly making logical, oh, if this is related to this, then that can't happen, or this must happen. Those are all logical decisions. This is a chapter on logic. So there's your answer. Voila. Briefly go back to the notes. Just going to cover a couple things in section 11.3. First, the law of ruling out possibilities. So we just kind of use that. So this is, remember, these laws are super basic. So what it says is when statement P or statement Q is true, and we know Q is not true, then P is true. Right? If you have two things, it says we know one of these is true, and you can say this isn't true, then the other one must be true. So we're using that logic when we're doing these logic puzzles. Then the trichotomy law, this is in your homework. So, and it's kind of, you might see it in later math classes. So, of two real numbers, A and B, either A is less than B, A is equal to B, or A is greater than B. And obviously none of those can be true at the same time. So given any two numbers, A is either less than B, A is equal to B, or A is bigger than B. Again, not rocket science, but a fundamental law of numbers. All right, so here, this is an example from your textbook. You can try to do this as practice. And then here's the 11.3 homework to work on. And then I put up another logic puzzle for you to take a stab at. So see how that goes. And then as always, send me an email if you've got questions.